Delighted you're here. Recording.
Thank you, Carol.
Oh, my pleasure. Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Carter and I'm the founder and CEO of Global Minded. We are dedicated to creating a capable, diverse talent pipeline to get more women, people of color, underrepresented populations, and any way you can define diversity into the education, economic mobility, and leadership pipeline. We do that in a number of different ways, one of which is a conference every year. And that conference this year, like last year, has been virtual. We launched with Earth Week and we will be going through 10 weeks. And the name of the conference is Reboot, Resilience, Rebound, Remarkable. And all the different sessions are led by leaders of color, student voice. So happy to have Rachel as well as Waukecha today representing students. But we have an annual conference. We do programs at different colleges through our college collaboratives. We have a summer bridge program for first gen to college students that we work with. And we do a leadership program every year with students. This year, we were very fortunate to work with Every Learner Everywhere. And we had 102 of our students from last year who we did 90-minute surveys with and provided several different reports. The final one was published yesterday called Student Leaders Speak to College Presidents, CEOs, and Policymakers. And we know that we can't solve for students without their being at the table and helping to co-create the solutions. So we want to normalize that in every area that we can. So without further ado, I want to introduce today's panel. We're delighted to have Waukecha Wilkerson here from CalEd, where she's the Director of Coaching. She is also an Ascend Parent Advisor to the Aspen Institute, and she has worked on the Guided Pathways California project in a number of different ways. So CalEd, if you're not familiar, is one of the organizations that, one of the companies that is dedicated to really helping adult learners in all different ways, but through the cell phone. So for basic math, English reading, writing, these are ways that people can get entry-level and promotion pathway jobs and take themselves to self-sufficiency. So we're delighted to have you all here today. We're really looking forward to hearing about your program. And Waukecha, introduce your incredible panel and welcome to all of you.
Thank you so much, Carol, and thank you for having us. As you mentioned, I am Waukecha Wilkerson, and I am the Director of Coaching for CalEd, where we are leaders in the mobile learning platform through microlesson, trying to create equitable access for all learners, regardless of their resources. And I really love to give our panel an opportunity to introduce themselves. And we can start in the order that they're appearing on my Zoom screen. We can start with Vickie. Hey.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vickie Hay. I'm the program coordinator at Orange Coast College, a community college in Southern California in Orange County. I'm the program director for both the CalWORKs program, which is TANF recipients, as well as the CARE program, which is a smaller program associated with the EOPS program in California. I'm the legislative advocate for California Department of Social Services with the community colleges. And I'm happy to say that I've been in the same position for 22 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vickie. And what a pleasure to have you joining us. Thank you so much. Portia, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Portia Polk, and I am the Director of Learning and Advocacy at Generation Hope. Generation Hope is a small nonprofit based in DC that provides holistic supports to young parents that are pursuing their undergraduate degree. And in that role, I lead our policy and advocacy efforts and our technical assistance program. I also am an adjunct professor at the University of DC. And unlike Vickie, I have been in this role for a year, but I've been in the student parent space for quite some time.
Thank you so much, Portia. So glad you were able to join us as well. David, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm David Croom. I'm Assistant Director for Postsecondary at Ascend at the Aspen Institute. Ascend is a national hub for breakthrough ideas and collaborations that move children and adults in their lives to educational success, economic security, and health and well-being. We take a two-generation approach to our work, focusing on children and adults in their lives together. And we bring a gender and racial equity lens to our analysis. And everything that we do, we draw on the expertise and experience of families, which is why Waukecha is part of our parent advisor cohort as part of the work. I at Ascend lead the Aspen Postsecondary Success for Parents initiative, which is focused on the 4 million plus students who are parents who are enrolled in post-secondary baccalaureate credentials, and however many millions of parents enrolled in vocational workforce credentials, trying to reform our post-secondary systems to serve that population effectively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. And most importantly, we have one of our current CalEd learners and participants joining us. Rachel, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself? You're on mute, Rachel. Can you hear us, Rachel? You're on mute. Okay. Well, I'll give a brief introduction on Rachel's behalf. It appears she may be having some technical difficulties. Rachel is a current participant in our CalEd Essential Skills learning pathways using our mobile devices, and she's also taken our STEPS course, which we are going to be introducing to you all today. So thank you, Rachel, so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you. Let us know if, oh, there she is.
I'm so sorry. I couldn't hear for a moment because there was a lot of ambient traffic, but I'm Rachel, and I am a CalEd learner through my local CalWORKs office, my CalWORKs recipient. And I'm also a mom of a 4-year-old. And that's my life.
Thank you so much.
And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
We are very excited for you to join us. And this is an example of life happening in real time for our learners and how having mobile technology can be effective with giving them support and messaging for their journey or their exploration into post-secondary learning or re-entry into post-secondary learning. So thank you everyone for joining us again. So about STEPS. STEPS is an acronym we use for our Steps to Educational Pathway Success. And we developed it here at CalEd to empower adults who are considering post-secondary education. This program is divided into 2 courses, Intro to Educational Pathways and Financial Aid. Because adult learners may or may not have some post-secondary experience, this program is designed in a way that learners can self-navigate to sections of the units that are most helpful and applicable to their unique situations. They can also return to courses as necessary and use this program as a resource at every step of their explorative journey into post-secondary education. STEPS aims to empower post-traditional learners with the language to navigate higher education, along with strategically infusing self-advocacy skills, development, and encouragement to persevere past challenges to achieve their personal goals. And a part of that, I really would like to start with our most powerful voice that's joining us on the panel, Rachel. Rachel, being a current CalEd learner, you have experience with our micro lessons approach to learning using your mobile device. What interested you about taking the STEPS courses?
Okay, so, okay, did I hear that correctly? What convinced me to take the STEPS course?
Yes.
Well, I just know that just about any career path that I want to take involves having a degree. And I wanted to know what the process was, even though I've done it before, but it's been over 15 years. I wanted to know what that process looked like. And I was also curious, and I found out through taking the course that I'm actually still on the hook for a federal loan that I took out when I was 19. So that's good to know, because now I can actually jump that hurdle.
Well, that's good. You were able to learn about. You say that you've experienced post-secondary education 15 years ago, and then you've stepped out. What outside of I just want to make sure we'll give Rachel. We'll come back to you. I'll go jump to another panelist for right now. Vickie, I wanted to ask you, STEPS was designed for a population of students similar to Rachel, who either have no experience or some post-secondary education, and they have a large gap in between their attempts. You serve a population at Orange Coast Community College in California that more often than not may fall into this category also. How do you feel a course like STEPS could make a difference with student experiences as they begin or continue their education?
I think now more than ever, I believe cellular course such as STEPS is a vital piece of technology that could very well bridge the digital divide we've come to recognize resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. I think in the last 22 years, I have never witnessed such an immediate shift in the skill levels and technological aptitude of my student parents as I've encountered this past academic year. As all the community colleges in California immediately pivoted to remote learning, suddenly our faculty, our staff, and especially our students had to adapt to a more independent college experience. Gone were the numerous student workers who typically assisted new learners in the processes of enrollment, assessment testing, financial aid applications, registering for classes. And we have realized there is a definite gap in how we provide direct student services. Gone were the various computer labs where learners could print assignments or peers to help with essays. All of those lifelines are now gone. I believe for re-entry students, older adults, and immigrant learners, having to adjust to a virtual world of technology has been a difficult process for some. Having a low-tech tool such as the STEPS cellular program is an excellent way to demystify post-secondary education and then provide information in a manner that learners can absorb at their own pace with very little pressure or stress, and in an environment in which they are comfortable, which is oftentimes their own homes. I believe that STEPS is an opportunity to offer information and resources to further equity initiatives in our society. Consider it a box in which some can stand upon to see over that fence.
Thank you so much, Vickie. You bring about a lot of really interesting points that I'm sure a lot of people are considering in this day and age as we are emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic and how learners are accessing educational resources.
I honestly think we weren't quite aware of how some people, I mean, we take our privilege, we're accustomed to computers and everything. I'm onboarding a brand new student who literally has never even ordered a pizza online before or through her phone. So it has been a tremendous shift. And especially I think with older adults, you know, CalWORKs serves typically women in their late 20s and 30s. And just like with Rachel, many who had previous college experience, but now are back because life is much different than it was when she was 19. Now there are children in this scene. So it is a big adjustment for everybody. Even the most basic things, you know, how to log on to your MyCoast account and how to find out where the financial aid tab is. We've always had assistants in our offices that have been able to manage that, you know, where my time is not taken up as director to be doing those more basic tasks. And now it's back in my lap again. So it's been a huge thing. I've not realized how much. Yes, we're issuing computers, Chromebooks to students who don't have technology. Now they have the tech, but learning how to operate it and how to manage it and how to attach documents and upload. It's been a difficult thing. We've, for each semester since COVID, now the college is offering on our adult learner side, our adult education, we're offering basic computer classes, how to navigate the internet. And those classes are full as soon as the registration window opens up. So I think this isn't, you gave me the benefit, Waukecha, to go through it myself. And it was really helpful. I really enjoyed the positive feedback. And I liked it that I could take a break if I needed to go do something else and I could go back to it. You know, in standard practice of higher ed, that isn't normally the case, you know, where it's sort of self-paced. I really do think it takes away some anxiety that people might have about what it means to be in college again.
Thank you so much, Vickie. Those are some excellent points to highlight with the shift in how we're delivering learning materials in even those essential self-advocacy skills. Which brings me to David. Research has shown that 1 in 5 college students are student parents, with expectations of that rate increasing over the next few years. Undoubtedly, post-secondary education has also been shown to have substantial positive effects for families. One challenge I would imagine for adults who are contemplating post-secondary education is knowing where and how to start. How do you think steps can bridge that gap and help carry adults with children from the idea of higher ed to the action of pursuing higher ed?
Yeah, great question. So something that we know from the research is that parents experience this concept of time poverty. So the idea that students who are parents have about half the time to dedicate to academics as compared to their childless peers. And that's because they're, especially in the case of single mothers, taking on pretty much all the child rearing. They're working many times full time while being enrolled part-time in academics. So I think that this can be really helpful. The STEPS program can be really helpful in finding an opportunity to really allow parents who have very limited time to even consider anything beyond raising their child, work, and kind of things that they're required to do. Think about this thing that is also a requirement, but it feels sometimes optional, of re-enrolling in their post-secondary pathway, thinking about what are some ways to actually do so. I think STEPS can be really helpful in really codifying that motivation. We know that student parents tend to be a highly motivated population, this idea of mutual motivation, that because they have their children, they want to be enrolled in college, but they also, I would say from some anecdotally and also looking at research, that students or parents typically know exactly what pathway, what vocation they're trying to get to. So it's about a way of demystifying the process and providing, again, that codification to the motivation so that they can really understand exactly what steps they need, because they already have the goal in mind. They have the motivation thanks to their children, but there's like this college and re-enrolling is just such so many decisions, thousands of decisions you have to make literally around financial aid and enrollment, tutoring use and all that. And there's a whole world of behavioral economics around how these systems are broken. And so I think that's where STEPS can be really helpful in demystifying and kind of getting them at least initially enrolled in the process. Something else that I want to mention that I thought was really interesting, I just saw yesterday that nonprofit California Competes just announced that 19% of California adults, which is about 5.1 million adults, intend to enroll in higher education within the next 2 years. That's 5 million California adults that intend to enroll in California higher education systems in the next 2 years. So this could be a huge wave of enrollment, and colleges need to be ready for that enrollment. It also said importantly too that of those individuals, almost 4 million of them, so 4 million out of the 5 million, intend to enroll in higher education that are exclusively online instruction. So again, we're looking at a population that are looking for online and quality online instruction. And I think that if traditional colleges don't kind of really understand how to do that quality online enrollment, they're going to not see the waves in enrollment that they need in order to maintain funding from states, federal systems, and all of that. So it's going to be really interesting, I think, over the next 2 years to see how enrollment shifts at colleges because of this desire to do access quality online enrollment. So.
Thank you, David. That's very interesting, and it supports the idea that with the expansion or the increase of potential higher ed learners, that number of post-traditional learners will increase significantly as well, especially in the student parent realm. That may increase that 1 in 5 substantially. I see Rachel. I want to go back to you because I don't want to miss the important aspects of your story that you were attempting to share. I wanted to ask you about your journey returning to post-secondary education or re-entering college. Now that you have experienced steps, what would you say the benefits are of having those tools accessible for you in situations like this where you're just living life and you have to incorporate, as much information as you can? How has steps been able to benefit you with filling in those areas, for example, with the financial aid, not knowing if you were, going to be able to overcome that challenge?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit of it. I'm like holding the phone up to my ear to hear.
No, I'm just asking about your experience utilizing steps, and can you share in ways that it may have been able to eliminate some of those mental barriers to pursuing higher education or returning back to college?
I think it kind of serves as like a visualization of the process, so it makes it less scary. That's what it does.
That's awesome.
That's what it's done, and I've actually, because of it, I'm actually on my way home from picking up a laptop from an equity program because I'm going to be calling the financial aid office shortly, and I'm going to be asking them what my options are now that I can't, now that I have to pay back my other FAFSA federal loan. But I'm sure that they'll give me plenty of answers there. That's their job.
And that, Rachel, is the perfect example of why STEPS was designed and created, was to help support you with eliminating those barriers that are either real or imagined, which we all have been subject to in our lives. So I appreciate you sharing and being so transparent about your situation, which now I want to talk to Portia and shift gears a little bit, because Portia works with a very specific population of learners, teen parents. And I imagine that there are plenty of intersections with identity within that population. So Portia, how do you think STEPS can support learners who are dividing their time between the responsibility of being a parent, a current student that's completing secondary school in some cases, and they're considering higher education?
Yeah, so as David mentioned earlier, student parents, no matter the age, are really experiencing the time poverty. And the research shows that for single student mothers in particular, they spend 9 hours alone between caregiving and home care responsibilities. So that's not including going to class, that's not including homework, that's not including working full time, right? So one of the major benefits of STEPS is really the micro lesson format, because it allows you to use the small pockets of time that you have available when you're going from place to place, or even when your child is napping, for you to intake a lot of information. But I also want to highlight the intersecting identities of the young scholars. One, a lot of our scholars, as we see with student parents broadly, are students of color. 75% of our scholars are first generation college students. Many of our scholars are first generation immigrants as well. And all of that can have a lot of impact on your relationship with the higher education system. Anecdotally, we know that sometimes there is fear with asking those questions and not knowing what questions to ask in order to gain access to the information that you need in order to pursue your pathway. And STEPS really removes that barrier by creating this pocket coach for you to interact with on a regular basis without fear of one, judgment, because there's a lot of stigma around being a young parent with children, but also to work out some of the questions that you might have about re-entering the higher education system overall.
Thank you so much, Portia. That is an awesome point about the I'm glad you highlighted the micro lesson format that CalEd uses to coach essentially our learners. And I'd also like to highlight that being a director of coaching, I don't think I've brought this up, that is a part of the program, is having the support of a personalized coach should the learner need an additional assistance with understanding, comprehension, or at self-advocacy, which we've thoughtfully inbreded into the program itself. Let's see, I want to return back to David because Portia highlighted some skills that were necessary for her younger learner population. But I wanted to ask David, from your work with adult learners, what are some key skills that they have emphasized that are necessary to be successful with post-secondary education?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you already kind of highlighted, I think probably the major one, which is this idea around self-advocacy. Interestingly enough, we're actually going to be, we being Ascend are going to be releasing a report soon between us and the JED Foundation around mental health for students who are parents. And something that came out really clearly in that report, which will be out in about 2 or 3 weeks, is that there's actually a difference between younger student parents who are younger than 25 and those who are older than 25. Younger student parents tend to feel more insecurity, more sense of isolation, and also substance use and other kind of other areas that show that there's some impacts on mental health. Older student parents actually tend to be more resilient and kind of already have the skill set to be kind of advocates for themselves, which I thought was really interesting. So I wanted to share that out because I think it kind of speaks to this piece around a need to maybe, and we've kind of talked, I think, a little bit about this in terms of our parent advisors, but the idea around older student parents kind of acting as mentors of sorts for younger student parents. And so I could see the coaching aspect of like CalEd and some of those elements is kind of allowing for the sort of advocacy and thought that maybe student parents are missing in these systems, right? I think some of the best programs that we see in this work with student parents, Generation Hope, for example, Project Self-Sufficiency, for example, have some sort of element of case management and advocacy. So we know that parents themselves are motivated, but there's a whole bunch of decisions and they have limited time. So I think it's important to have these programs that provide mentorship or case management to help parents access the key resources that they need, but then also become stronger advocates for themselves. So it's not just around teaching them, how it's not just around like making the decisions for them, but also empowering them to actually become better advocates. And so I think that's where a program like a CalEd, for those who don't have access to those really great programs like Generation Hope or Project Self-Sufficiency, can learn how to become better advocates for themselves so they can make better decisions. And we know if folks make good decisions in these spaces in terms of like financial aid take up and loans and classes and all of that, that they tend to succeed in post-secondary education.
Thank you, David. And I want to acknowledge that Rachel did have to drop off, but fortunately, I have a significant amount of experience as a student. I didn't mention it before, but I am a current Sacramento State University student, and I'm a single mom of 3 children. So I have experience with what it's like with starting the journey of post-secondary education later. As a, post-traditional is the new term that we're using, demographic. And one of the things that I wish I had, and which is how STEPS was kind of developed, was sort of the blueprint on how to not only self-advocate, but persevere through challenges. And I can totally understand how it can be difficult to take the first step in exploring education, especially as we all know, there tends to be some bureaucracy sometimes in that realm, where sometimes if you get you get a different answer depending on who you're asking about admissions or policy or financial aid. And having a program like STEPS, there's a portion in there where we encourage students, if you're not getting the answer you want, it could either be the question you're asking, or you're asking the wrong person. So if you get someone on the phone who gives you one answer, hang up, call back, and keep calling and asking for someone else until you get the answer that you're looking for. Someone tells you what the question is you should be asking instead. So I just wanted to highlight that portion. Outside of the self-advocacy, it's also the perseverance through the no's. I want to, with that in mind, of the community college experience and the various different ways or different sections of community colleges that students have to navigate to just begin. You have your admissions office, your financial aid office, your EOP office, there's, when you think about it and you experience in that time poverty. Vickie, how do you think that a program like STEPS could help students to navigate, say, through the financial aid aspect of education when they have no background outside of just student loans? You're on mute, Vickie. Sorry.
Computers. That's a very good question, actually. And I think, like I said initially, I think it takes away some of the anxiety. It allows them to run through it. Yes, most of this information can be found on the web, but sometimes the verbiage and the language used is very technical. And so I think that the STEPS program sort of brought it down to a very basic, process where it can be ingested and absorbed in sort of micro minutes, not where you have someone where you're standing in line in financial aid and there's 50 people in line behind you and the people at the desk are overwhelmed and tired and maybe a little bit snippy. So this just allows people to get some basic information so they can go into these offices and be armed with some knowledge that they can feel confident in what they're asking. Financial aid is a critical aspect of higher education. Rarely can people afford it without getting either grants or loans or other types of assistance. So I think it's really helpful.
Thank you so much, Vickie. And you said something that really was really great, because the CEL Ed way of delivering micro lessons is to be at a certain literacy level so that it is more accessible for more populations, so that students, for one, we're speaking with them at a level that most people can understand and that they can digest. And so I'm glad that that's something that you picked up with experiencing the mobile application. Let's see. I think. Let's see. I don't know, Carol. Do you have a portion where we can open up for questions?
Sure, we can do that. Yep, we can do that right now. So anybody, and it might be easier just to put the questions right in the chat. It's kind of easier for all the panelists to see it there instead of going into the Q&A.
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead and put your questions in there, and we would love to hear from you. And Robert, is that you? That might be Robert, who is on our panel of Monday of this week. He's a data scientist.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see.
I didn't see the question. Are they showing up in our chat if they have one?
If they have one, it'll pop up there. So we'll just wait a second until they do that. There's one. How many students have participated in the program so far? That's from Aisha Redden.
That is a great question, Aisha. And for the STEPS program, it is currently being offered to all of the participants of our that are of the our relationships with essential skills programs. So it really is part of like a series of lessons. And what I'm going to do right now, see if I can get you a quick and fast answer, because that's what we do as CELED. We think on our feet.
Mm.
So right now we have about 70 students or 70 learners currently enrolled in STEPS program who are within some level of accessing that course. And what's so great about it, about the STEPS program, is that students, the way that it's set up is that they can access lessons as they need them. So maybe because they have experience with financial aid in post-secondary learning, maybe they only need the overcoming barrier section of CELED, how to navigate lifestyle around post-secondary learning. So it's really meant to be used as a resource tool, and but students can still go through the entire 2 courses independently, and once as they see fit. So thank you, Isla.
And I have a question while other people are putting questions in, is are you working with any libraries around the country that are really serving so many adult learners and so many of the folks in the population? So wondered about that.
So we are working with several national libraries nationally, but one of our major partners that we're working with is the California Department of Social Services, which is how Rachel, our student panelist, was able to access that opportunity. And we're working towards making it accessible to our national, as many national partners as we have. But it is in its infancy stage, but we are looking forward to expanding that opportunity to other learners.
Thank you. And it seems like the similar place would also be like the, Department of Housing, in different cities as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of those, this program is intended to catch those that otherwise would be overlooked.
Yeah.
As we saw with the onset of the pandemic, how many households that did not have technology.
Right.
But a lot of people have access to mobile technology, and a lot of companies are not designing for mobile learning the way that CELED is trying to excel in that area.
Yeah. Which is just amazing, because all around the world, people are learning from their phones. It's like they're leapfrogging over America, and we have so little of that happening here.
Right. And we're trying to really shift that and create more equity-based
And
programming.
Here's a couple more. Let me just read these to you all. Just came in. Okay, we got that one. And then what happens when a student is overwhelmed with this level of responsibility and wants to give up? Hold on, now it just knocked me out of the rest of that one. And wants to give up, how do you encourage persistence? That's from Candy Carter. Thank you, Candy.
Thank you, Candy. That's such a thoughtful question. And what makes CELED unique in this round is our ability to provide professional, educational, and wellness coaching to our learners on an as-needed basis. Most of the program is self-paced, but there are coaches there available via text message. So there's not an inconvenience within the lifestyle of someone who maybe can't jump on the phone, especially for families when it's just not always convenient. So we offer encouragement, nudges, and ultimately compassion via text messaging. And if a learner would like to talk on a phone, we can offer that professional coaching with goal setting and using SMART goals and breaking those down into really small achievable goals that they can see progress through over time.
And here's the next question. And this is from Robert Joseph, who I think is one of the people that we profiled. If you read our newsletter, we profiled him on April the 1st, really incredible first gender college person. His question is, the program sounds awesome. What have you learned about phone users versus computer users? And he says, I'm using my phone to listen to this talk.
Thank you, Robert. So we have found that mobile learning is actually very beneficial for learners, especially learners who don't fit into that traditional model of what a learner could be. It could be any socioeconomic level. We've learned that people may not always have access to technology. People are commuting, and people have different learning styles. And some people enjoy the flexibility of being able to learn while they're on the train, or while they're, in between appointments, or while they're on their lunch break at work. Our technology is also used by a lot of our corporate partners to provide upskilling resources to their employees who otherwise may not have opportunities to advance within an organization. So we're able to break down a lot of the learning materials from corporations so that they can upskill their workforce and provide more economic equity within those companies.
And then let's see, Robert has another piece, which is what about bandwidth issues? And then let's see, there's 2 pieces to his question. So hold on one second till I get in there. How do you collaborate with other organizations? And that was part of one of my questions, Waukecha, too, is to share the other organizations that are some of your major partners and the ways in which you work with them. And then as an add-on to that, Robert says, what about bandwidth issues and possible data usage costs?
Okay, that's a great question about data usage and data usage costs and bandwidth. Unfortunately, I don't have that information, but I can definitely get that information and follow up with you after this so that you can have it. But we are working currently, one of our large partners is the Barbara Bush Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
We work with the ONA, which is a library in New York. We have, right now, we are working with, that I can think of off the top of my head, Queens Library is one of our partners. Let's see, and some other partners that I won't name specifically, but our network is growing. We're also working towards our wellness programming for under-resourced communities. So we are starting, we're starting programming to also, as you can tell, post-pandemic, there'll be a very high need for wellness coaching and wellness programming to make sure that those resources are equitable, as we saw the effects of under-resourced communities not having access to health care and resources. They were affected most by the pandemic.
And it looks like Portia put in digitalinclusion.org, and then Vickie Hay put in getemergencybroadband.org. So maybe Portia, you could share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so this was really addressing the question around the bandwidth issues and possible data usage costs. Although I don't have the research on that, National Digital Inclusion Alliance does a lot of research around internet access and allows you, they have a tool so you can measure your internet access to see what it supports. And it links you to policies and bills in your region around technology access. So they're really about equity of access to technology. And I believe that's what we are getting at, or what Robert was getting at with the question. How can we support bandwidth to support CalEd and to support the STEPS program? And this is one way to really look into that.
I'll also add that a lot of the corollaries of the lessons we've learned about the ways in which the shots have not rolled out are the same issues of rural areas and these kinds of things with least resourced, populations. And it's just so mirrored right now, I think, in what's happening with the vaccine out there.
Great points, and thank you so much, Portia. And something else I'd like to point out is that CalEd is also able to provide call-in access for learners. So learners who don't have access to a smartphone and would prefer accessing through a call-in feature, they're able to also access the STEPS program and any of our programs that are offered at CalEd.
That's awesome. And it's also, another piece of making sure everything is accessible for different abilities, right? And deaf learners and visually impaired and
Absolutely.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Vickie, I see Vickie also provided a link. Vickie, would you mind sharing about your link that you provided?
That's a federal program that low-income people can apply for, and it offers up to a 50-month discount on internet services for qualifying families, as well as a $75 a month discount if the family is on tribal lands, and a one-time discount of up to $100 for a laptop, tablet, or desktop computer. With a co-payment of more than $10, but less than $50. In California, to piggyback on what Waukecha was saying earlier, our TANF program is called CalWORKs in California, and adults who are in the program are required to participate in a certain amount of hours per week. And so having CalEd partner with the California Department of Social Services is opening up these kind of opportunities for populations who may have instead just gone into minimum wage work, whether it's the service industry or retail. So this is opening up another whole avenue for people. And recently in California, we passed Senate Bill 1232, which now will allow welfare recipients to go to college or higher ed for their entire time, their lifetime clock of welfare benefits. And no holds barred. So people, if they want to, if a person maybe already has their bachelor's degree and they come on aid, she or he can go back and get their master's degree. So CalEd is really a very beneficial thing that can help pass the word around, and offer new opportunities. And I think it's a really vital component to welfare to work, because like all of the CalEd, it's accessible, it's easy, it's not difficult to manage, it fits into people's lifestyles and their work schedules. And in all honesty, there's something to gain from it compared to maybe doing other maybe less meaningful activities for welfare to work, hunting for a job that you're not qualified for just to fill up those hours that you're needing to do. So CalEd is offering that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in California too, for certain programs, the county welfare departments will be able to pay for internet services for some clients. So that's really helpful.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased to see my county just signed on for CalEd not too long ago. And it was funny, I was in a meeting and one of the assistant directors said, "How come you know more about this than we do?" And I said, "I have an inside source." Thank you, Waukecha.
That's awesome. And we got another question, and it looks like this one is from Toyin Fox. I don't know, Toyin, if I said your name right. But do you get complaints from adult learners about eye strains or sight problems after starting to use their smartphones for online learning? What suggestions do you have to alleviate this?
Oddly enough, and we work with various populations. So I have not received a lot of complaints from learners about eye strain using their phones for online learning. And I think that speaks to the technology age that we're living in, where most often you can see people become can become sort of hypnotized by social media in a way that they don't notice they've been on social media for hours and hours. And I think using that time in a way on our platform where they're learning a skill or they're learning how to self-advocate and navigate through things that are going to enhance their life. Excuse me. I think that the benefits outweigh the risks in this instance. And if I were to make a suggestion for how they can alleviate this, I would say use the call-in feature. Like I said, all of our lessons are also accessible via dial-in.
That and the other thing, and I have to just say that, like, as I put on my glasses, like, I feel like my eyes have gone so far downhill in the last year on all these Zoom calls. So I'm using these a lot more than I was. But the other thing is on your phone, you can increase the size of the letters. You can make them gigantic. So that's another thing that I think can be helpful.
And the brightness of your phone. And then because our lessons are broken down into micro lessons, they're broken down to be done in 3 to 5 minute increments.
It's good to know too.
So you can get on and do 2 lessons in 10 minutes and get off.
Oh, and look, she's got a tip in there. Or no, I guess Vickie. Okay, sorry, I thought that was Toyin again. Well, maybe just in the time remaining, one of the things I was thinking, I just have been so impressed, ever since a few years ago, I met Jessica and I was like, wow, this is just so powerful. And then Jessica is just like a magnet for people like Waukecha and all these other incredible people that are in just like the whole stable of all the work that they do, CelMed, CelEd, all these different programs, because this is one of several. But I would just love to know, kind of more aspirational from each of you, if the work that each of you are doing from your different chairs can go as well as you can possibly imagine, what do you see happening in 5 and 10 years? And I think that would be really powerful, to explore. And as you start, I'm going to grab a Kleenex really quick. So I'm turning my camera off for 1 second.
I can go first on what I envision is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years with mobile learning. I 100% believe this is going to be a very growing industry as we readjust and normalize distance learning. I think the opportunity is there, even in the higher education field, for delivery of education through mobile learning. Currently, as a current student, it is not an accessible way to do regular learning through mobile device as a college student. However, I believe there's going to be a significant shift in making that a high priority of, accessibility for learners to receive education through mobile device. And not just for education, I know that there's currently a shift for wellness in mobile technology. People are on the go and they're going to want to receive that information and with our attention span shortening so much, especially in the micro lesson format. So that's my perspective.
Thank you.
So for me, our work focus on students who are parents. I think one, to Waukecha's kind of mentioned earlier, I believe that this will be a growing population of students enrolled in post-secondary pathways in this country, especially if colleges really realize that, this is 20 to 24% of the total population of undergraduates, that they're building supports within their systems to support student parents. So case management, financial resources that are focused on childcare and other supports for dependents. But one thing that's important to even just start the work is capturing data and identifying how many parenting students are within these systems. And unfortunately, we see very few colleges doing this. Achieving the Dream did a survey a couple of years ago, and they showed that only about a quarter of the community colleges in their network were actually capturing any data around parenting status. So I think the first thing that I would want to happen is that parenting status is captured, and that over the next 5 years, we see institutions of higher education building supports for the parents and actually surveying and talking to the parents and engaging with them to understand what supports they need to be successful. So that's over the next 5 years. If that happens, I think in the next 10 years, we can see a significant increase in enrollment of student parents. And we know that there are, as I just shared earlier, we know that in California, there's 5 million parents who want to re-enroll in the next, or sorry, that's 5 million adults, many of which I'm sure are parents who want to re-enroll the next 2 years. So if institutions of higher education build it, they will come. So that's my feeling.
So I echo what's already been said, but I'll also add that additionally, I see it becoming a viable option for students and really skills attainment. And I'm thinking about like the some college, no degree adult learners and seeing CEL-Ed and mobile learning as being a catalyst for really reaching that population, especially as student parent enrollment increases as we emerge from COVID. But I would also like to see an extension of student parent advocacy through mobile efforts. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but I know that if used appropriately and integrated in a way that really benefits adult learners, I think that there can be a community of student parents and real advocacy efforts that starts in your hand.
How about for you?
Well, I'm kind of old school. I miss the in-class person. I miss the peer support and everything. But I do agree with pretty much everybody else on the panel that is definitely a wave that we're going to see. It's been very difficult for a lot of instructors to manage remote learning. You know, they are set in their ways as well. We have a combination of fully online, but we also are doing most of our classes are what we call live online. So it's a Zoom or a similar setup so that the classroom is still in effect. But I know in California, there's a big push towards fully virtual learning. We have our CalBright College that is not a part of our regular community college system, where a lot of the coursework are sort of smaller certificates. They're not GPA rated or anything, so it's a little bit different, but I think we're gonna see some very innovative changes, partly as a result of the nationwide guided pathways movement, you know, to encourage people towards degree and certificate attainment, you know, and not waste your time taking underwater basket weaving. So I think it's really on the cusp, and I think the CEL-Ed platform is really at the best time in evolution of higher education.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. As we end our presentation, I want to thank all of the participants, including our learner who had to leave early. And I want to give thanks to Carol for hosting on our behalf and promoting this new program that we've launched and highlighting it for us.
Well, we're delightful that you all are here and that you're such really important partners to Global Minded. And we look forward to figuring out with all of you how the Global Minded community of inclusive leaders can support what you do. And as I said earlier, we have a daily newsletter. We have monthly equity events for K-12, higher ed, technology, STEM, health leaders, foundations and funders. And I think we're going to start doing a mental health and wellness in August as well. So we'd love to have you all every month with those communities of leaders as well. And we're open to other ways we can support the great work you're doing. I'll also just give a plug that next week we're celebrating educators and leaders, continuing to do that with panels every day next week. And the first one on Monday is Will Artificial Intelligence Make Education More Equitable? The next next one is Latino Leaders as Learning Change Makers. Wednesday is with Mort Sherman from AASA on developing the principal and superintendent diverse talent pipeline, which is super homogenous. I'll just say that. So, you know, I think the numbers are 14,000, mostly white men, and then less than 2,000 superintendents are women in a field where it's 72% women. That is so upside down. Anyway, that's one of the topics for next week. And then equity, inclusion, and belonging in K-12. And finally, building the diverse talent pipeline in K-12 master's degree programs and PhD programs. So that's what we have for next week. But we are so delighted to end this week of technology empowering students with you all. And just thank you for your innovation and your dedication to so creatively working with the needs of adult learners. So thanks to all of you, and looking forward to seeing you guys in Denver next June for our live conference, which we hope we will all be in good health and be here then. So thanks very much to all of you. It's been a delight. And thanks to all of you for joining us online. And we'll be posting this later today, and it'll be in the newsletter tomorrow morning. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invite.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.